are you okay? And we are recording this. Thank you. Paula, are you okay to say hello and introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Nancy. I'm happy to do that. Greetings, women with IBM Affinity Group. I'm Paula Eichenbrenner, TMA's new executive director, and I'm really so thrilled to join you today for the latest and greatest in the lineup of amazing expert speakers that the Affinity Group leaders have arranged. So really looking forward to the travel presentation. And I just have such a high regard for this group already based on what I've learned from Nancy and from Martha Arnold on our board and from my colleague Rachel. So I'm looking forward to getting to know each of you over the course of the coming months as I continue to dig into this role. And I'm thrilled to be here. And I think this is an especially relevant topic for me to learn about, as you know, we are hard at work making plans for TMA's International Annual Patient Conference. And Nancy is being so helpful to us in that regard too, because she has a lot of Baltimore insight based on where she lives. So at any rate, this is a topic that's very much top of mind for the entire staff team. And so figuring out how we can make the conference programming exceptional and figuring out how we can make the travel piece easier for our attendees is something I know I'm going to learn about today. So thank you so much for the warm welcome, and back to you, Nancy.
Thank you, Paula. So I'm just going to give you a little background on this. This is something that I have been following for probably 2 years with the Muscular Dystrophy Association, and it started a couple of years ago with Michael Lewis. And Michael, I know, spoke to everyone in, I think it was March of 2022. And it's something that we all struggle with, having IBM. And it's not us, it's the airlines, but there is so much that's being done, and we're excited and thrilled to have the support of the Muscular Dystrophy Association working for the neuromuscular community to help make air travel safe and easy. So as this session, as individuals living with a physical disability, we encounter a variety of airline travel. We're constantly required to make accessible adaptations for safe airline travel. Some regulations are mandated, however, there are differences in the regulations and interpretations. Today, we are honored, and I am so excited to have Mindy Henderson, who I was able to connect with about 3 months ago. Mindy is currently the vice president. She is a passionate advocate for air travel. But along with that, she is the Vice President of Disability Outreach and Empowerment for the Muscular Dystrophy Association. And also, she is the Senior Editor-in-Chief of the Muscular Dystrophy Quest platform, which includes their Quest magazine, their blog, and podcast. Also, she is the author of The Truth About All Things That Suck, and the host of a podcast, All Things That Suck. Mindy was named in 2022 Women of Influence by Success Magazine. She's a guest contributor on Morning Motivations on CBS Austin. She was named a Woman to Watch by Austin Magazine. Her passion for making the impossible is contagious. And she's not finished yet. She's just starting. Ladies, I am just so excited to have our fellow warrior, Mindy Henderson, speak with us. So today we're going to start a few minutes with a presentation that Mindy put together. We all have the right to soar. So if you haven't seen it, here we go. I hope. Sorry, we have to skip this. Here we go. Sorry.
Nancy, are you seeing it on your screen? We're not. We're not seeing it.
Still not seeing anything.
Okay. So sorry.
Oh, we had
Okay.
it for a second.
So it's not working. So now I have to stop sharing and hold on. So let me hold on. Sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. It was on my screen. It was not on everyone else's screen. So let's.
Do you want me to try, Nancy?
Sure. If you,
Paula.
who is that? Mindy? Or
This is
Paula?
Paula. Yeah.
Oh, if you think you can get it.
Let's see.
I tried
guys see
to
any of
power
it?
through the day. I was like, I'm gonna be strong. I at one point had to fight back tears because this is so hard. I'm Mindy. I'm an author, a speaker, and an advocate for disability rights. Headed to the airport, getting ready to go to DC, talk to legislators about making air travel more accessible. Haven't traveled in 14 years on an airplane, so I'm a little nervous, but very excited. Love you.
Love you too.
Flying, the only form of transportation left in this country where you have to be separated from your mobility device. It was very strange pulling up to the airport after 14 years not flying. Coming inside was a little disorienting, figuring out where you were supposed to be and who you were supposed to talk to. Then we got to TSA. It's a dehumanizing process to fly if you have to use a wheelchair. And when we got to TSA was the first glimpse of that. I was asked to move over to the side and let other people through. I think I counted 25 people that went through the scanner before someone finally came and got me and told me that they were ready. And then when I got to the other side, I probably counted another 25 people while we waited for the person to show up to do the pat down. It was eye-opening. I know that it's their job to be cautious and careful and get everyone through in the safest way possible, but I definitely felt like I was deprioritized through that whole process. If you have a disability, there are so many extra steps in addition to just packing and getting myself ready to go on a trip like anybody else would. I had to call the airline. I had to call TSA. We had to get here 3 hours early so that if we're running late, if any of these steps is a bottleneck, I can't run to my gate and, catch the flight like somebody else. I am feeling a little anxiety here at the gate, presently waiting to get on board the airplane, because this is the part where there is a ton of opportunity for me to get hurt, and there's a ton of opportunity for my $60,000 wheelchair to get damaged beyond repair.
So my friend here is gonna grab my knees. Okay. And then we just need one or two people at the top. Okay. Don't grab my arm though. Sure. Yeah, grab my arm. Oh, don't grab it. 1, 2. Oh my gosh. Is that the second? See, shut me down. Everybody put me down. Oh, back. Oh, God bless. Oh, my gosh. It's okay.
They do not make this an easy process for people. Having to be dragged down the aisle of an airplane in front of other passengers. The pilots who had to lift me into the aisle chair because the people who are supposed to do that were not present or available or where they were supposed to be. I don't want to do this any more than I have to. The main overarching message that I want to get across to legislators in Washington, D.C., flying from a wheelchair or flying with a wheelchair is a very dehumanizing process. I feel relieved to be back in my chair and that my chair made it here in one piece. So tomorrow we're headed to Capitol Hill to talk to senators and representatives all about what we learned today about why it would be a good idea just to make air travel more accessible and let people bring their wheelchairs on airplanes.
And with that, Paula, let's stop for a minute, and if we could, and I'm going to go back and we can share your screen, or Mindy, let's turn it over. I am so thrilled to be able to have Mindy Henderson come and speak and talk to us and teach us today. I have chills every time I see that video. So ladies, let's give our round of applause to Mindy. Mindy, it's all yours.
Thank you, Nancy. First of all, thank you all so much for having me here today. It's an absolute pleasure. I've gotten to know Nancy and this group and what your group is all about over the last couple of months, and I am here for it. I'm so excited to be here, and I love what you are. What you're here to do with each other and for each other. So thank you for having me. You know, that video, it's not fun to watch. It's hard for me to watch back, and just thinking through the evolution of my own personal travel story since we made that video last May. There are a lot of things that I've worked through in my own mind, and what I want to do today is give you some backstory on me. I want to talk about legislation and then some tips and tricks and hacks for travel that I've learned over the last year. But it's interesting because, like you saw in that video, I didn't travel by plane for 14 years before that. That was my first time back on an airplane in 14 years. And I didn't get on a plane in 14 years because of all of the risks. It's scary, as all of you know. There are risks to our mobility devices and very, very important, very expensive equipment that we rely on. And there's risk to us in terms of injury, and then, you know, not the least of all is, you know, the keeping our dignity intact. You know, there was I think in watching that, you could all probably feel the loss of dignity that I experienced in those moments. And it's not right. And, you know, the reason that I got back on a plane after 14 years was because, you know, I've worked for MDA now for about 3 years, and they the advocacy team at the Muscular Dystrophy Association, which is phenomenal. They are such dedicated, such smart, such incredible people who are really working to change the world for the disability community. They called me and asked if I was interested in going to a in-person Hill Day in May last year to talk to legislators about air travel. And I said, you know, I haven't been on an airplane in 14 years. I don't know what I have to say. And they, you know, their response was, come and tell them why you haven't been on a plane. And in fact, they said, let's send a camera crew with you and document the experience. And I have to credit MDA with the creation of that video. I showed up and I was there for the camera, but they did the rest. And what came about was this video and one other that is also incredibly powerful and tells a similar story to mine, but with her own perspective. And it's garnered a lot of, I think, really important attention and awareness. I don't think that the general population in our country understands or knows what travel is like for a wheelchair user or a person with a disability if you have to fly on an airplane. And that's probably the most common comment that I've got since this video came out, is people just say, I had no idea, you know. And the thing that I always say to people is that, sure, but one day you might have an idea. This could be you. You know, the disability community is an equal opportunity group. You know, anyone can join our little club at any moment in time because of disability or illness, injury, you know, so many different things. We have an aging population. And so if this isn't you, it could be your mother, it could be your father, it could be your sister. So this is something that we all know, I'm preaching to the choir, but really deserves a lot of attention. It's not right. It's 2024, and we've got to be able to do better. And so that's why I got back on a plane after 14 years. I couldn't think of a better reason than trying to go and be part of the solution and talk to the people in a position of power to make the difference. And it's become such a passion project for me. I've moved into, Nancy gave you some information about my role at MDA, and I've gone from being just the editor-in-chief of Quest Media to taking on an expanded advocacy role. And so in fact, it's funny, I'm doing math in my head because 14 years, not on an airplane. And by the end of March of this year, I will have taken 8 flights to go on different trips and things. So it's something that, you know, the floodgates kind of opened when I finally did get back on an airplane. And, you know, it's not right to sit by and watch your life go by. And so I've made the decision and I've worked through things in my head that I'm going to live my life, and advocacy has become very important to me. And most of the travel that I'm doing now does revolve around advocacy. But I'm not going to sit by anymore and let the world pass me by. And with that comes a very big leap of faith. You know, every time I get on a plane, as all of you know, you're taking some chances and you're facing down some risk. But for me, I've decided that I'm strong enough emotionally to get through whatever life is going to throw my way. And I'm willing to take the risks for the payoff of having the experiences that I want to have, and hopefully for contributing to change that's really, really needed. So a little bit about my disability. I live with spinal muscular atrophy, which is another neuromuscular disease that's covered under the umbrella of muscular dystrophy. And so I am a full-time wheelchair user. I have I don't stand or walk. I need to be transferred with complete assistance. I have, you know, my trunk muscles, my arm muscles are very affected. So I do have a fairly severe mobility related disease. And so that is what what my disability looks like, and sort of what I'm working with when I do travel, among other things. So that's a little bit of my backstory. I wanted to pivot quickly and talk about legislation. And I will say, Nancy said it earlier, there are some very exciting things happening in the airline industry for people with disabilities. And in fact, there's legislation and things that are happening right now that are some of the biggest disability or pieces of disability legislation in like 40 years. And so it's a really exciting time, you know, and part of me looks at that and says, you know, well, about time, you know, it shouldn't have taken us 40 years to get here, but this is where we are. And so what's happening is the first thing that I'm not going to say a ton about, but I just wanted to call your attention to it. There was the Department of Transportation released, I want to say at some point last year, some of you may be aware, the Airline Passengers with Disabilities Bill of Rights. And this is something that we should all know and be familiar with. I put a link to it in the chat so that you can access it later. But that talks about right now what you are entitled to as an air travel passenger with a disability. I will be the first to say it's not good enough. But it's information that's good to know and to have, so that you are aware if and when your rights are violated. So that's thing number one that I wanted to mention. The second thing that's going on right now is the FAA reauthorization. And again, some of you, I'm sure, are aware of the FAA reauthorization that's in progress right now. The FAA has to be reauthorized every 5 years or planes don't fly. And so advocates and organizations like the Muscular Dystrophy Association saw this as actually in 2023, the FAA authorization expired and they filed a couple of extensions. But we saw it as a really good opportunity to get new language written into the FAA reauthorization around disability. And so advocates and organizations have been lobbying hard and working the phones and doing all of the things to get language inserted into the FAA reauthorizations that would provide a better experience for people with disabilities. Of course, for wheelchair users, the ultimate end result is have wheelchair spots on airplanes. That's what everyone is marching toward. It's not as easy as you would think. You know, when I came into this, I was like, how easy is it to, or how hard is it just to move a chair out of the way and make a space for a wheelchair? Harder than you would think. And I've gotten quite an education about all of the engineering that's involved, the safety, the regulations, all of it. But what we've accomplished in this FAA reauthorization, and it's at this point, it's passed the House, and just, was it last week or the week before, it passed the Senate subcommittee that was in charge of passing it before it gets to the Senate. And so within the new language, what we've been able to accomplish is to get language included that very specifically addresses training that's needed first and foremost for anyone who's going to be handling a person, doing transfers, handling a person's mobility device, all of those sorts of things. There's going to be mandated training for those individuals to make sure that the pilots, like you saw in the video, don't have to hop up out of their seats and come and lift me into the aisle chair. So that's the first thing, is mandated training. There's also stricter penalties for things if equipment's damaged, if someone's rights are violated, if a person, heaven forbid, is injured as they're being transferred. Those sorts of things are all being addressed in this FAA reauthorization, which is huge progress. And most importantly, all of the things that have been inserted into this FAA reauthorization gives us a clear path to wheelchair seats on airplanes. And as I mentioned, the FAA reauthorization is going to come around again in another 5 years. And so the hope is that the accountability is being put in place. We're working very closely with the Department of Transportation, as are other groups and organizations, to make sure that everything that's being put in place now is executed over the next 5 years, so that when the next FAA reauthorization rolls around, they can mandate wheelchair spots on airplanes. There's also another something, and this is going to be a teaser, and I apologize, but I'm getting information that from our advocacy group and from the Department of Transportation directly, that they've got something in the works that's going to be announced at the end of this month. So keep your ears open. Certainly whenever it's announced, the Muscular Dystrophy Association will make announcements. We'll make sure and sort of evangelize whatever these new announcements are. But we're excited. We're optimistically, but cautiously excited about what is coming. And so the like I said, the FAA reauthorization was passed by the House, by the Senate subcommittee, and I think the deadline is March 5th or 7th. Is it the 5th, Nancy? I know you were exchanging emails with Jory about it.
March 8th, she said.
March 8th. So that's the current deadline for the Senate to vote on the FAA reauthorization. There have been a few sticking points on this vote that have had nothing to do with any of the disability language. It's other things like pilot training and things like that just sort of get in the way and muddy the waters. The FAA reauthorization, of course, is not just about disability. And so we're hopeful that the vote, since the subcommittee passed it, we're hopeful that the vote will happen by the 8th and that it'll be passed. And then we can start seeing the benefits of this new legislation. There is a link that Nancy, if you haven't shared it already, you may have. Oh, it's there in the chat. The Support Air Travel Action Center is a link in the chat that if all of you, if you haven't yet, it is the easiest form you will ever fill out. And what it will do is amplify the voices of all the advocates, and it will show your support of the disability language in the FAA reauthorization. So I would love it if all of you would flood the Senate's inboxes with this form after our call today. That's one of the action items that I wanted to share with you, and what you could do to help us make progress. So the Senate vote, and then of course it has to be signed into law by the president. So we're close. And again, it's not the be all end all. There's still work to do, but it's going to get us much, much, much closer. Okay, let me look back at my notes. I get so excited when I talk about this. Okay, so that I think is everything that I wanted to cover, everything that I know at least about the legislation that's currently in progress. Let's talk about actual travel and what I've learned over the course of the last year. And I do want to say something that inserts a little bit of optimism into this conversation. That first flight that I took in May was terrible. I don't know that I can name airlines and things. I will say, if you watch the video, I think you can glean what the airline was. And interestingly enough, what happened with that video is that airline saw it and they were mortified. I had the opportunity to meet some of their executives at a conference that I went to a few months later. And guys, I am here to tell you the experience I had 2 or 3 months later on that same airline was night and day. And I asked the executives at that conference what happened, and they told me that they had seen the video and they had gone into high gear, retraining every single person who comes into contact with a person with a disability or the ground crew that handles our equipment, and they've made just a real commitment to, even though they can't let us bring our wheelchairs on airplanes, they've made a real commitment to making the experience more humane, more dignified, safer, and the experience has been night and day. And I can't technically recommend an airline, but do with that information what you will. And I can tell you that the improvements have been phenomenal. And I think the thing that is the most the most important change that I've seen is that they're listening to me. When I show up, number one, the right people show up at the right times. In fact, I don't even have to seek anyone out anymore. They come and find me. And then the people that I end up working with ask me exactly how to transfer me. They ask me exactly how to work with my wheelchair, and they give me as much time as I need to make sure that they get it right. And so I do, like I said, this is not an all around, it's not an entirely bleak situation. You know, there are people out there who want to do the right things and care about, you know, now that we're bringing it to their attention, they care. and they want to change it. So I hope that that gives you a little bit of encouragement, and makes you feel a little bit better about the state of things. So back to tips and tricks. I will start out by saying that despite how sort of used to flying I've gotten at this point, if I can't get a direct flight somewhere, I still won't make the trip, because there are too many things. The planets and the stars have to be aligned just right if you're gonna, have layovers and transfer planes and all of that. You have to get lifted additional times. Your wheelchair has to make it onto the next plane. Everything has to run like a machine. And I don't personally, obviously this is a decision you have to make for yourself, but I don't personally feel confident enough in the process yet to fly if it's not going to be a direct flight. So that's kind of my first thing. Let's talk about TSA. So I did also put a link in the chat to the TSA Cares webpage. TSA is another organization that we've been working closely with. They also saw this video and they were not happy about what they saw of TSA in the video. And so they've actually, the airline actually that I spoke about a few minutes ago and TSA are both using that video in their training now. And so TSA is another organization that has taken notice and have committed to us to do better. And so TSA Cares has been around longer than this video, but I know that it's getting some additional attention right now. And this is something that I would recommend you do. If you're going to be flying somewhere, go to that webpage, and I can't remember off the top of my head if it's a phone call or if it's an online form, but regardless, make them aware that you're coming, and your experience of being expedited through TSA should be smoother. If they anticipate you coming, they've got to have the right people there. Of course, if you have a wheelchair or mobility device, you can't go through the scanner. You have to do a pat down. And so it will make the process smoother in some cases. It's a relatively quick step. So I encourage you to use TSA Cares, regardless of what your mobility status is. If you have a disability and need a little bit of extra assistance, go ahead and use that TSA Cares form. There was something else I was going to say about TSA. When you get to TSA, make sure that the first person that you see who's handling, baggage, shoes, all of the handbags, all of the things that has to go through the scanners, let them know that you're there. Don't take for granted that they're going to see you. Say hello, let them know that you need extra assistance. If you have someone traveling with you, of course, it's going to make things a little bit easier because they can be responsible for your belongings. But TSA will help you if you're traveling alone and you need them to get your belongings through and make sure that they get back to you. So let them know that you're there. Let them know that you need, a female assist is what they call it, and they'll make sure that you get the pat down that you need. The other thing that I've learned is that when they come and get you for the pat down, they're going to take you to a specific area that's, I would say, semi-private. They always ask me if I want a more private space, if I want complete privacy. And so it's your call. They should offer it to you, but if they don't, and you don't feel comfortable having that kind of pat down where people can see what's going on, then ask them, say, is there another room or a more private place where they can do this? And they should make that happen for you. Let's see, TSA. Another thing about TSA, some of you may be aware that there is a TSA pre-check option. And I put the link to that also in the chat. And I have not done this myself. I just haven't had the time to go and do it. It is a little bit more time intensive thing because you have to go to a specific place. I think they fingerprint you and basically do a security check on you. But then when you get to TSA, you get to go through a special pre-check line and it's much, much quicker. I don't think you have to do the pat down even if you do the TSA pre-check. So look into that, and I highly encourage you to do it. I am going to do it myself when I find a couple of minutes. So that link is in the chat for you. Let me make sure that's everything about TSA. Okay, so the other thing I would tell you is if you're going to fly, I always book my my tickets directly with the airline. I call the airline and speak to somebody, because when I do that, and you can of course call them after the fact if you book your flights through other things, but call the airline, make sure you talk to them, tell them that you are going to be traveling, that you have a disability, and let them know exactly what you need. If you use a wheelchair or other mobility device, make sure that they know that. Some airlines have a form that you can go onto their website and fill out that I've learned about, with information about your chair, removable parts that are on the chair, sensitive parts of the chair to be mindful of. And then this is a form that you can print and attach to your chair for the ground crew to see, and they should know to look for it, so that it gives them some very specific information about your chair, what to do and what not to do. I also know people who have created their own little cheat sheet for their chair. Don't make it overly complicated. A few bullet points that go into anything that's unique about your chair. Some of the things to include are things like where to grab onto the chair to pick it up. So, you know, if there's a removable part that's going to fall off, if they pick it up by that part, make sure it's noted not to do that. Tell them where they can hold it to pick it up, what parts are removable, maybe even instructions for how to recline your chair, if that's possible, because sometimes the doors to get the baggage into the cargo hold are small and they have to recline your chair. So that can be good information to put down. Laminate it and attach it to your chair. I know a lot of very frequent travelers who use that practice and say that it's very, very helpful. When you talk to TSA and the airlines, if you need assistance, you know, if you're ambulatory, but you can't walk long distances and you need a wheelchair, things like that, let them know and ask them how to navigate that. And between TSA and the airlines, you should be able to get the assistance that you need. Also, when you get to the airport, always go to the baggage check counter if you have a wheelchair or a mobility device. Even if you've checked in online, still go to the baggage check counter, because they need to process your chair as baggage. Basically, you'll be able to stay in it at this point and take it to the gate with you, but they have to tag it properly as baggage. You can also ask, again, depending on the airline that you're flying, at this point at the baggage claim desk, ask them, ask them if they have any control over where your seat is. Sometimes the people at that baggage check counter can move your seat, and you're going to want to be as far forward in the plane as possible so that you don't have to navigate any further down the aisle of the plane than you have to. So that's another thing that I have learned to do, is to ask those first individuals if they can move my seat any farther forward. Sometimes they can pull a rabbit out of a hat. Not always, but sometimes they can. Once you get to your gate, after I get through TSA, I go straight to the gate. I do get to the airport about 3 hours ahead of my flight. That may feel excessive, but it saves me a lot of stress and anxiety. There are, you just never know what can pop up and what's going to slow you down. And I don't want to be stressed out about making my flight. So I do get there 3 hours before. Once I get through TSA, even if it's still 2 hours early, I go straight to my gate and I talk to the gate crew. Sometimes the gate crew turns over, and it may not be your gate crew for your flight when you get there, but I always go and talk to them and ask them if they're the crew for the Boston flight or the New York flight or wherever I'm going. If they're not, then you'll have to wait. But if they are, they're going to have to do an additional tagging process for your wheelchair. You want to make sure that your wheelchair gets tagged to be brought back up to the gate when you get to your destination. Otherwise, your chair or mobility device will go to baggage claim when you get to your destination, and that's no fun for anybody. So make sure and ask them, because they're behind me putting tags on my chair, and so I just make sure and ask if it's been tagged to be brought back up to the gate at my destination. I also tell the people at the gate what kind of transfer assistance I'm going to need. If I'm going to need an aisle chair, if I'm going to need one person or two people to help lift me, I tell them exactly what I need. And this is the part, guys, where you're probably going to have to be the most assertive. I've caught a lot of flies with honey in this process. I try to be very, very friendly and personable, but you have to insist on what you need. And so if you need two people to help lift you, tell them that you are going to need two people. I also tell them at this point that I want to talk to the person on the ground crew that's going to be responsible for my chair. More often than not, they tell me they're too busy and they're not going to be able to make that happen. And I always tell them, no. I do this every time I fly, and there are a lot of sensitive parts on my wheelchair. My wheelchair costs $60,000, and it's my legs. And I really, really need to speak with that person and show them personally how to operate my chair. Sometimes they say, show me, and I'll tell the person on the ground crew. I don't have that kind of trust in me yet. And so if that's what they come back with, I really do insist on speaking to someone on the ground crew. And I've never not been able to make it happen. So don't let them tell you no. It's another really good reason to get to the gate as early as possible. Okay. Also at the gate, I mean, this is a little thing, but there are usually seats. I'd be surprised if you hadn't noticed them, but there are usually seats that are designated for people with disabilities right by the jetway that you're going to walk down to get to your airplane. Another good reason to get to the gate early is so you can snag one of those seats, just so that you are top of mind the whole way through the process. If you have a disability, I'm sure you know that you are supposed to, regardless of the airline, you're supposed to get on the airline first. At the end of the flight, unfortunately, you have to be the last one to get off the airplane. And unfortunately, I have no workarounds for this. That one is what it is. And it's a royal pain. It's my absolute least favorite part of any flight because you're uncomfortable and you're tired and you've been sitting on a plane for 2 to 4 hours. But there's really no way around it. So settle in, get comfortable, and just know that you're going to have to be the last one off the flight. When I get on the plane, I do try to ask a flight attendant to confirm that my wheelchair made it onto the plane before we take off. They usually can get the captain to radio over and make sure that it did. Then when we're getting close to our destination, I talk to the flight attendant again and ask them to call ahead and make sure that they're going to have an aisle chair and the number of people that I need to help lift me available at my destination. Those things will save a little bit of time, a little bit of anxiety, and just help things be a little bit more organized. For the actual transfer, what I've found works best for me, everyone, of course, has their own preferences, but I've learned I use a Hoyer lift or a patient lift to do my transfers at home. And I bring my sling with me from my Hoyer lift. And after I check in at the gate, my travel companion and I go to the ladies' room. We put the sling on me like I were going to be doing a transfer at home. And then I can have someone in the front hold on to the front straps, someone in the back hold on to the back straps. And it makes for a fairly easy transfer, just an up and over, and they don't have to, pardon the indelicateness of this, but they don't have to grab your body parts and risk grabbing something that's fragile, that my arms aren't strong. I don't have great bone density, and so trying to lift me holding my arms can be really, really dangerous. So using something like a sling, and they actually make slings. If you don't use a Hoyer lift, there are slings that you can buy on Amazon even that are made for these types of airline transfers. Well worth the money, I have found. The other tool that I have learned to travel with is bubble wrap. So after I am on the airplane, my travel companion bubble wraps my joystick on my wheelchair and anything else that's sensitive, or even if it's not horribly sensitive, but you want someone to notice it. And bubble wrap kind of screams, be careful, this is fragile or whatever. And so bubble wrap whatever you're concerned about getting damaged on your chair. And it is so worth it. On Amazon, I have found these awesome pouches. They're bubble wrap pouches. And they come with like 50, I think, in a box. And the pouch is the perfect size to fit over it's a little sleeve, and it fits over my joystick. And I put like 4 of them on my joystick. So that is a tool that's one of my favorite little tips. Let's see here. The other thing, and actually, I think this is my last little tidbit. is even, well, if you check your bags, because again, it can take so long to get off of the airplane. Sometimes by the time you get to baggage claim, all of the baggage has already come out. So if you get down there and you can't find your bag, if there are no more bags coming down the chute and you don't see anything around the carousel, there's a little office right off of baggage claim. Go in there and tell them that you just got off your flight. It took a while to get down to baggage claim, and tell them you're looking for your bag. So that I learned the hard way when I couldn't find my bag and thought that I had lost my luggage. But that's usually where your bags will be. So I think that brings me to the end of my tips. I hope this was helpful. I know that you all have done your share of traveling, and there may be things that I went over that that you may know already, but I hope that there was information included in all of this that that was helpful and that will allow you maybe to travel a little more easily than you have recently. So Nancy, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, actually, Mindy, I think that was fantastic, and I'm so excited to hear some of the things. There are a couple of things, if I can add and ask some questions about. There are two things, and I'm going to let you start. Some of us are still not in chairs, but use other devices for mobility, i.e. rollators that we need to walk with. So that's one thing. If you can talk a little bit about how far we can take the rollator, where it might be when we get off. But the other thing that hopefully we got a tremendous amount of questions on is toileting on board the plane.
Yeah.
So if you have any things, and I know some of which may be covered in the FAA reauthorization, but if you can talk a little bit about those two areas,
Yeah.
I
So
would appreciate it.
yeah, I'm sorry. The equipment that you're talking about, I don't know that term.
It's a wheel. It's like something that we're walking with. It's like a walker with wheels.
Okay.
Does it utilize to walk?
Is it foldable?
It is foldable, but it will not. Some might go in the luggage bin, some may not.
Okay.
It looks like it's like a walker. Some have 2 wheels, some can have 4 wheels. They're with handles and brakes on them.
Okay, here's what I would suggest. Go to baggage claim and show it to them. There is limited space on airplanes. They typically have a small closet area and things like that where they might be able to stow that for you. But I would say go to baggage claim and ask them. They might be able to call the gate. Ask them what they can do for you so that you can take that all the way to the gate. And I would think, this is a guess on my part, but I would think that just like a wheelchair, even if they can't stow it in the cabin for you, you should still be able to take it to the gate, and then they'll tag it much like a wheelchair or other mobility device and take it down below to put with the baggage. And ideally, again, make sure that it's tagged to come back up to the gate. But work through that with the baggage claim people and then with the gate people. Just tell them how important it is to you, and ask them, how they can make that happen as easily as possible for you.
Okay, great. That's good. I'm going to,
I also know, I'll just throw this out there too. I also know that at that baggage claim desk, If you don't have something like that, some sort of assistive device, but you can't walk real long distances, they also can get you a wheelchair at that point, which, you know, we may not be thrilled about, but they can also get you other kinds of assistance if you need it. And then bathrooms. I know this is not my favorite topic. It's one of my biggest points of frustration. I should be fair to the Department of Transportation because they did, I think again last year, unveil a new requirement that I think if it's a single aisle airplane, at a minimum, they have to have an accessible bathroom on board. But for someone like me, once I'm in my seat, I can't get to the bathroom, you know? And so they are supposed to have an aisle chair on board for that reason, to help assist you get to that accessible bathroom. But again, I don't want to get lifted again. I don't want to have to go through the rigmarole to get back in the aisle chair, go use the accessible bathroom, all of that. And so I personally plan ahead and limit my fluid intake, and I don't use the restroom while I'm on airplanes. I know that that's not a good answer, but unfortunately it's reality, and that's kind of all we've got right now.
And Mindy, that's one of the reasons that we're all women here.
Yeah,
To talk about it, and I know some of the problems. So you're talking about single aisle. I know that I almost got caught inside of a bathroom on a transatlantic flight where I couldn't pull, my wrist didn't, and I couldn't pull the door, unfortunately. But so how can we trying to prepare ourselves for flights? Will the airline tell you what kind of a plane it is? Can you ask them about accessible toileting on board, whether it's new enough, whether it's not?
Yes. So yes, you can ask them when you book your flight, or you can call them after the fact, find out what kind of airplane you're going to be on. They're also supposed to, and I am so sorry, I can't remember now if this is already in place or if this is a new thing with the FAA reauthorization, but they're supposed to now publish the actual dimensions. This is not a bathroom thing, but they're supposed to post the dimensions of the door that goes to the cargo hold, because there have been people who have had experiences where their wheelchair has been too big to get it through that cargo hold door and have had to miss their flight or book another flight. But now they're supposed to publish those dimensions so that you can know ahead of time if your chair is going to fit in the cargo hold. But yes, they should be able to tell you what kind of plane you're going to be on. And I don't know, because it's not something I've personally asked before, because again, I can't get to the bathroom myself. So I haven't asked them questions about the accessibility of the bathroom. I would say ask, they may or may not know, but certainly ask.
It's something that maybe we can talk with Jory, Mark, and Paul about.
Yeah.
On the next round, the MD.
Yeah.
So a couple of other, I have to say that we have never gotten so many questions.
Wow.
Before, but we had over 45 questions from everybody. Are there any more specific questions that we have not covered? I know one had to do with feeding tubes and things, and that's something that I'm going to probably say we probably just have to ask the airline for. And one of the other things is with accessible, just general accessible travel. And that's interesting. Oh, and from your travel, couple of things. So you're traveling with your chair, you get off the plane, you get to your destination at the airport. Now, how do you get from the airport with your chair
Mhm.
to where you're going? You don't have your own van, you don't,
Yeah, it's a great question. So, couple of things. When I book my hotel, I always ask them if they have a wheelchair accessible shuttle. And I've learned to specify with a wheelchair lift. If I don't have a wheelchair I can transfer out of, I always ask them if they have a wheelchair accessible shuttle from to and from the airport that has a wheelchair lift. So that is sort of my plan A. Um, my next thing is if they don't, I would look at the airport and call if they have a shuttle service. I don't take for granted the information that's on their website. I would call their shuttle service and ask them if they have that kind of capabilities. If they don't, my you can research the cab situation, the taxi cabs, Uber and Lyft situations, where you're going to, and find out if that's an easy to use or an accessible option for you. I will say New York City is brilliant in terms of getting an Uber. I went there last June and I have never in any city been able to get an Uber in under 5 minutes every single time. It was bananas. So New York is great for Ubers. The last thing, if it's not looking like the taxis or Lyft or Uber is going to be a good option, you can rent a car. And there is a website called Accessible Go that I love. I don't know, not quite more than coffee, but I love these people. They specialize in accessible travel. They are the nicest people, the most helpful people. You can go to their website and book an accessible hotel, first of all, and there's a list of accessibility criteria. You can check off what you need. And in every single reservation that gets made on their website, they actually have a person call the hotel and confirm that the room that you've got reserved does in fact have all the accessibility that you require. Also on their website, they just added car rentals. And I used this when I went to DC in December, and it worked like a dream. You do, I think they have minivans with some minimal hand controls that you can rent, but they also have, just minivans with like a wheelchair lift or whatever, and then you can have someone, if you're traveling with someone, they can drive. But they dropped it off and picked it up from the airport, and it worked like a dream. The customer service was great. I had the mobile number of the person that rented it for me, and I was texting with them before and after the trip. So Accessible Go is amazing.
That's fantastic. So,
Yeah.
and if you were driving brave lady for the DC area,
My travel companion was. She did not enjoy driving in DC, but she was a trooper, and she made it work, and we survived it. So, but yeah, traffic in DC is a little crazy.
I know, I'm here now.
Roads
Well, I'm in Baltimore,
sense.
so close. One other quick question. With the FAA, are these regulations just for domestic or international? I know that some of us really are interested in doing some international travel.
Yes. You know
So-
what? I think I'm going to have to defer to Jory
Okay.
and Mark on that.
Okay.
I don't want to give you bad information. And I haven't traveled internationally, and I can't recall what the legislation is directed at. I'm sorry.
Okay. And it's the person who wrote that, and I know if you can email us, I'll contact Jory and Paul just to follow up.
Okay.
So, are there, Mindy, you're spectacular.
Oh,
I'm just, after meeting you, after actually meeting, I got involved with this because of Michael.
Yeah.
Michael Lewis, who
Yep.
Michael formerly was with MDA and now has left and connected the two of us.
Uh-huh.
So, I was watching you and I was so sad that I couldn't be there last year for
Oh.
the FAA day. We were moving, and I told him 6 months ahead, Michael, I can't. I
Oh,
want, but I
shoot.
can't.
There
So
will be other opportunities. Don't worry.
I know. I wanted to, but I mean, what's being done, and with your voice and helping us, it's just I don't have words to express it.
Oh.
Paula, I'm watching you as you're on here. Is there anything you would like to say to Mindy before we go on to the rest of our stuff on behalf
Yes.
of TMA?
Thank you, Nancy. I'll just reiterate the thanks to you, Mindy, for sharing your story so forthrightly and creatively with the video content too. I just love that kind of spurred this, that particular airline and so many other things kind of sound like it galvanized attention. So I think that's a great takeaway to me too, and the importance of capturing stories from individuals like all of you. And so I take that to heart for the rest of my workday here at TMA. And I was taking furious notes, typing like that. You know, that cat gif where the cat's going like this on a keyboard? That was me taking notes of all of these. I'm new to this role and new to some of this work. So just really great hints and hacks. And I will definitely be pulling this forward for our conference attendees, as I said. So thank you so much.
You're so welcome. And, I appreciate the comments. It was an absolute pleasure to be here. And, the thing is that, it's kind of selfish work, because I'm one of you. I'm coming at it from the standpoint of what I need, but I also know that there's so many others out there who are in the same situation. And so I know that we're making progress and we're going to see more really soon.
And we're right there with you, and that is exactly what we try to do for the women in this group. We're all in it together to give a positive experience, whether it's networking and learning, but learning how we can live a normal and happy life.
Yeah.
And I know, yeah,
and we're all entitled to that. So, speak up, and if something's wrong, don't be afraid to call people on it. It's important.
so
Thank you so much.
No, thank you. I'm going to give you a great round of applause for those of us that can clap and those of us that can't. But Mindy, thank you. I'm going to go back to sharing my screen.
And I'm going to let you all get back to your meeting and drop off, but thank you again.
And thank you, and Mindy, we'll be in touch.
All righty. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye. So with that, we were, I don't know about anyone else, but I'm still reeling at everything that I learned. This is Mindy's book, The Truth About the truth about things and how I can't read through my stuff, but just Mindy Henderson, and you will find all of her info. So with that, ladies, thank you. Let's talk a little bit about some of our upcoming things. Our next meeting, we're going to go back and on March 19th, which will be 7 p.m., we're going to do a networking breakout session. Sharon and Laura and I have been talking about a couple of topics, and actually there are some things we'd like to do. So we'll talk, but it's probably going to be around advocacy, not as much legislative advocacy as it is our own personal advocacy as a patient, as an IBM warrior, learning how to advocate for us and some of the easy things we can do. One of the other topics that came up on April 16th, and it's going to have to be a 7 p.m. meeting, ladies. We're really excited to be able to introduce the topic of incontinence. Incontinence in IBM, we have spoken about it several times. We were made aware of some things that are going on across the pond, as they may say, and have been in touch with both the researcher, IBM patient who is working on this. I know one person on this call has seen some of the preliminary information, but we're going to be able to present this study that on incontinence and IBM and what is happening. And Paula, this is a new thing, so you guys haven't had it. So it's a new special thing that our group was able to get hold of on research for incontinence. We're also working on the heart connection for something, and we're working on something special for the Myositis Awareness Month. Hopefully, we're working on something with with mental health and clinical outcomes for chronic diseases. So we're going to do it with a positive spin on what's going on. And there are 4 or 5 people that we're talking about and working with. So that's kind of where we are in the next few months. If there are topics you'd like, ladies, women with IBM at myositis.com. So next thing, February 29th, Rare Disease Day. There are a lot of things that are coming up. Please take advantage of them. There is the Every Life Foundation is hosting a Rare Disease Week on Capitol Hill. If you'd like to participate, you can, Every Life Foundation, you can find it on their website. There is a Rare Disease Day at the NIH, February 29th, from 9 to 5. It's hybrid, it's both in person and it's virtual. So you're going to be able to hear a little bit more about what's going on with rare diseases at the NIH. And if you're interested, contact Paula at myositis.org for this. The other thing is the FDA has their orphan products development host an annual virtual public meeting for Rare Disease Day on March 1st from 9 a.m. until 4:30 p.m. So those are some of the things